welcome to Thinking Outside the Box with me, Tim Box.
And me, Britt Box.
We talk about all things related to mental health, emotional well-being and how to navigate your own mind in these strange times. But we're not doctors, so please don't confuse our advice for medical advice. And even though we come at these subjects with a slightly more light-hearted approach, please don't think we trivialise any of the subjects we discuss, because we certainly don't. But we do come at it from a different perspective, hence thinking outside the box. Okay, Britt.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm alright, how are you?
I'm okay. I listened back to one of our earlier episodes the other day just to check audio quality. I'm a lot more energised now. I noticed I've got this is my radio voice.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to CKGY. For all the biggest hits before midday.
Nice.
I know we're going off on a tangent immediately, but fun fact, I used to record my own radio show on a tape cassette recorder. If you don't know what a tape cassette recorder is, ask somebody who's nearing 30. And I used to do that in my basement when I was a kid. I had a little microphone. I used to have my own radio show, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into radio.
Wow, did you have a DJ name at all?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No,
sure you didn't?
I'm sure I didn't.
I feel like in the depths of my memory, I seem to recall that you did have a radio name.
Do you know what? I regret bringing this up. I may or may not have had an embarrassing radio DJ name that I gave myself, and I'm not going to disclose it on the podcast.
Okay, shall I disclose it?
No, carry on.
Okay.
Right, episode 16.
Okay, episode 16.
If you DM me on Instagram, I might tell you.
You should.
At Box. Come find me.
Episode 16. You know the significance of the number 16?
Should I?
No, I was hoping you had something.
Oh.
I've got nothing.
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16, there we go.
Sweet 16.
Exactly, yeah. So here we are, episode 16, and the funny thing was, so last week,
yes,
it was Mental Health Awareness Week, wasn't it?
Well, when we're recording this, maybe not when you're listening to it, but last week when we were recording it, it certainly was Mental Health Awareness Week.
Yeah,
but I wasn't aware of that.
No, I wasn't. Ironically, I wasn't aware until the sort of midweek when I started to notice a lot of my channels that I follow on Instagram and things like that were putting up mental health awareness stuff.
I see.
Yeah, but the first point to make, I feel, is that every week is Mental Health Awareness Week, really. It shouldn't just be for a week. We should always be aware of our own mental health and looking after our mental health, and also, looking out for others around us and checking that they're okay as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that will segue beautifully into this week's episode.
Well, this is why I started there. Last week we did a mental health first aid course.
We did, yes.
And it was awesome. We really enjoyed it, didn't we?
It was really good. I didn't know what to expect. I am a lapsed first aider in that I've done the training several times, but
as in physical first aider now.
Physical first aid, yes. I've done the physical first aid training a few times. I've even actually used it a couple of times, which is both terrifying and very rewarding.
Wow, I bet it is terrifying.
Yeah, it is. And I say lapsed only because in the current global situation, I believe my last certificate expired before I've had a chance to go and do it again. But
how long do they last for, by the way?
I think it's 3 years.
Okay, because you have to remain current, do you, on sort of all the latest tech?
Do you know what? It's not even so much on the latest tech. It's just so that you remember it, because you do a day course. And you get told all of this stuff. It's a lot of information that gets thrown at you to do a first aid course and to do a mental health first aid course, as we found. So, it's like if I said to you, hey, that thing you did on one day 5 years ago, can you...
That's a very good point.
I mean, you don't remember 5 minutes ago.
That's true. That's true. Where am I? What am I doing? What's my purpose?
What's happening?
Yeah.
So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, but I didn't know what to expect in terms of mental health. Yeah,
I get you totally. The thing that's worth saying, so with physical health, and I think this was what we noticed straight away, was that Andy Campbell, the guy who ran the class, he was awesome.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, Andy, if you're listening. He was making the point that it really correlates to physical health.
Yes.
In terms of physical first aid.
Yes.
It plays that part with mental health.
Absolutely.
And I guess what we mean by that is that you're not there to heal anyone or cure anyone of what's going on with them. You're there to provide support until they get the professional help that they need.
Yeah. So when I did my physical first aid training, and anyone who's done first aid will know, one of the first things they say to you on the day is, we're not training you up to be doctors and nurses. Right now, we're training you so that your job is to keep someone stable or keep them safe until professional help arrives.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing that was really hammered home on the training, is that don't kind of step outside your lane. Don't try and be more than you need to be. All you need to be at that point is a point of support for people. And just to relate it to physical first aid as well, I remember you saying, and I think we have a friend, Silas, who is
paramedic.
Paramedic, and he did a TED talk, didn't he, about doing something.
Yes.
Yeah, and even though it's scary, doing something is always going to be better than doing nothing.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Even if you don't know what you're doing, in the sense of just being there. And I found that with the mental health first aid, it was very much a similar message.
It was that, and this is the thing that I think as well that I got straight away was, so you hear this saying, don't you? We all have mental health. Yeah.
I know. The thing is, it winds me up from a grammatical point of view.
Yeah. And
it winds you up from a mental health
point of view. For me, it's like that's saying slightly nonsensical. Like we all have mental health. It's a bit like saying we all have health. Which I suppose you could technically say, yeah, that's correct, isn't it? Because we do have a level of health.
But we don't say we all have health. We say, we all should look after our health. We all should be aware of our health. It's more that rather. Okay, here's what it is. I think people using the term mental health as like a physical, tangible thing, like that you have. Rather than just, in the same way that I have 2 legs, I have 2 arms, but it's I have mental health.
Yeah.
There's a word missing there.
Yeah. What might that word be?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So, but the way it was described, I thought made more sense in as much as mental health, we can be doing really well with our mental health or really badly with our mental health. If we're struggling with our mental health, it doesn't mean we're mentally ill.
Yes.
It means that at the moment, maybe we need to take a bit of time for us and be mindful of our mental health.
Yes.
In the same way that we might say, you know what, I'm going to start walking or running or exercising just for my health, or I might start eating better. We recognise when we're we're being
neglectful.
Neglectful of our physical health.
Yeah.
And we need to be the same when it comes to our mental health, don't we?
Yeah, and I know we're going to come on to it, but I found it really interesting that as soon as you put sort of the mental health label on anything, sometimes it gets really serious with people really quickly.
Yeah.
Sort of, I don't feel too hot today, or I don't feel too great today, turns into my mental health is struggling, and then all of a sudden that feels heavier.
Yeah. Well, Andy made the point that recently he put out on his social media that he'd been neglectful of his mental health recently and he wasn't doing too well.
Yeah.
And instantly he's getting loads of private messages about, are you okay? Do you need to talk? And almost like, which is great, that people reach out and they want to provide care. But he said it was almost like it had been misunderstood.
Yes.
As if he was saying I'm lapsing into ill health or something like that, rather than, oh, you know what, I need to pay more attention to this because we all suffer at times,
So comparatively, I have a friend who this week, this friend hasn't been doing great lately. Been struggling a little bit, but put on their socials that they weren't feeling very well, and then like 2 hours later put another thing up that said, guys, it's just a stomachache, like I'm okay. Not everything is that, and that really, really made me laugh, because it's kind of, sometimes when people try and help, they maybe make it heavier.
Yeah, but I think that is like the paradox, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That that the people who, when you look back in your life, the people who were really in the depths and were really struggling, they only really gave trace signs, like on their socials or when you interacted with them.
Yeah.
And you look back and you can see, oh yeah, the signs were there.
Yeah.
But it's not like they were overt. They were those subtle comments here and there. So you kind of can understand why people in this day and age, where we're a little bit more educated about this stuff, where we might think, hang on, you know what, I'm going to check in with them and check they're okay.
Absolutely. I think as well, though, it just reminds me of that, there's a line in the thick of it. I don't know if I've mentioned the thick of it on the podcast before, but it's one of my favourite things of all time. And Ollie turns up and he says, how are you feeling? Anxious, nervous, worried? And she was like, I was fine until you said anxious, nervous, worried.
Well, we're going to come on to that, actually, because one of the things we cover was how to have a conversation with somebody about their mental health.
Not like Ollie.
Yeah, without inadvertently triggering negative mental health. Yeah. But here's a question I've got on my notes here. Why did we do it?
Well, you said I'm doing this thing. Do you want to do it? And I said, all right, I'm not doing anything else that day.
Brilliant. I think that's what a pure motivation that was to do that particular thing. I know a friend from my aerial classes who posted months ago that she had done it. And since I didn't, do you know what? I don't think I even knew it was a thing. Yeah. Before that. And I saw that she'd posted about it. So it's kind of been in my awareness that I wanted to look more into it. And then the opportunity came up where you said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to join me? And I said, yeah. So really, you were the crux of our decision here. Well, yeah, I feel, I was the inception. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Some of you may know I train practitioners in the method that I use. And one of my practitioners, Nicole Mazzucato, who, by the way, check out her podcast with Anthony Gitch. Hypnotic Healers, that's a really good podcast. She said, I know this guy who's doing a mental health first aid course, and it's actually, I think the way she sold it to me was, he does it quite cheap. And also, it was a single day with more home study than actually classroom stuff. And I think she knew that would appeal to me being sort of, not great with the amount of time available.
Busy. You're a busy man.
I'm a busy man. But I thought, that sounds really good to me. And where I know that a lot of my practitioners obviously are interested in this sort of stuff, I thought I'd put it out to the group and see if they wanted to do it. And we had kind of half a dozen of my practitioners on there with us, didn't we?
And then me.
And you as well. And it was lovely to have you there as well.
Yeah, I wanted to do it because if you're listening to this and you've found this podcast through my socials, in particular, Britt Marie Box on Instagram, come follow me, you'll know I talk about mental health a lot on my social media, purely from a personal. I do apologise. I have to interject here. My teeth are really painful at the moment. I have braces on currently. Hope I won't have them on for forever, but I have them on currently, and I'm struggling. I'm tripping over my words, so I do apologise.
They're looking good, the old teeth.
Thanks. Shout out to Bespoke Smile, the best dentist. Anyway, what was I saying? It made me completely lose my train of thought now.
It was about teeth, I think.
What was I saying? I talk about social media on my mental. I talk about social media on my mental health.
Brilliant.
Oh, it's going well. I talk about mental health on my social media from a personal standpoint because I am a massive advocate in the telling the truth if you're not okay. I spent most of my life when I was depressed and I was not good just going, I'm fine. And funny enough, when you said about it's the little things that people say, when I was really bad, when I was going through an exceptionally bad stage of depression, it was only a handful of people that knew. And I didn't it wasn't one of those, it wasn't obvious with me. It wasn't obvious. It was very much in the same way that, in the confidence episode of the podcast, we talked about how I look like a confident person, but I'm actually quite an insecure person. It's that I hide things very well and I hid it. But now I feel like I have a platform. I feel like I have a responsibility to share the message of if you're not okay, you can just say so. And as a result of me sharing my story, I often get DMs and messages and emails from complete strangers who tell me their story. And whilst, I can only do so much, I'm very, very grateful for people thinking that this is a safe space, that they can talk to me. I'm very honoured that they feel they can message me and reach out to me about it. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to say the wrong thing back. Yeah,
this is the thing. When you suddenly find yourself in that position, it's worth getting a little bit educated on it, isn't it? In terms of what the current thinking is.
I'd be devastated if you can't go into life thinking I think I might say the wrong thing, so I won't say anything. That's a bad way to be. I had that after my mum died. I had friends that I just didn't hear from, and when I got in touch with them and I said, I thought you'd have reached out to me. And they said, I didn't know what to say, so I thought nothing was better.
That's it. And it's often what people think. I think I've been there as well. Before I was doing this particular job, anything mental health related was very much taboo because our family don't talk about mental health. It's not something that we regularly, chat about. So
whereas comparatively, my mum was a mental health nurse.
Well, this is the thing. It's got to talk about different background, isn't it? But, and so it was something that I regarded as a very taboo subject. And again, exactly as you said, I'm like, well, I won't say anything. That's going to be best, isn't it? Rather than say the wrong thing. And interestingly enough, when we talk about conversation skills and communication skills on this training, Andy was saying the first one that they say is think carefully about what you're going to say.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not so convinced by that one guideline because it feels like that's going to stop us from actually conversing with the person.
Because you're worried you're going to say the wrong thing.
Exactly. And if you've got the course saying think carefully, you're like, oh God, am I thinking carefully enough? Am I thinking the wrong things? You know, when really people just want to know that you're there for them.
Absolutely.
When we were talking about caring for a loved one in one of the earlier episodes, the thing we were saying is that ideally people just need to know they've got someone who's keeping them safe.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that it's they can relax, if you know what I mean. Because
I guarantee the saying nothing will just give the wrong impression. It will give, honestly, and I'm not saying this is kind of this is a black and white thing. This is how it is. You should be scared. I'm not saying it like that. But by saying nothing, it kind of implies that you don't care, and that's not the case, you know. But we've had it in both of our personal lives where we've gone to people, we've said we're struggling, and we've kind of both been given the, not the brush off, but kind of the, oh, I'm not the person to talk to about this, you know. So it's that's not the thing to do, you know. If someone's come to you with something, which we learnt on the course, if someone's come to you with something, the best you can do is go, right, I'm listening. What is it?
Well, this is why we're talking about this now, isn't it? Because I think people having some base level degree of mental health first aid skill is going to be beneficial. And obviously we're talking about this for, an hour on a podcast. It's not like we're teaching you how to be a mental health first aider.
No.
But we're going to cover some of the points that we found interesting, we found valuable, just because, I don't know, I think we should be educated in this topic.
I agree.
I'd really, really love it if mental health first aid was taught in schools. Because if and I always say this about what I do, it would be lovely if we actually had lessons at school that were teaching us about our emotional responses, our emotional well-being, what it all means, how we manage that.
Yes.
If we had that, people like me probably wouldn't have a job, to be fair, because we wouldn't encounter so much struggle and so much confusion as we go through life.
Yes.
But
I'd also have a class on the realities of being on social media as well.
Well, I think that would very much be part of it, wouldn't it? Like basically, you could teach a whole GCSE in managing your own emotional well-being, because you would have all these topics covered. Because life is very varied. It's a rich tapestry out there, and there's lots of things we've got to deal with. So you can't really be over-educated about this stuff.
Also, at the risk of sounding very controversial and someone who knows nothing about teaching and even less about children and schools, I think that the current curriculum is a couple of generations behind.
Yeah.
In the same way that I can remember when I was at school having IT classes.
Yeah.
And I learned a little bit about code. Just scratching the surface, because computers. I'm not that old, but computers were big and bulky, and it was one of those things. Whereas nowadays, there's more technology, so they've kept up with teaching technology, but they've not kept up with maybe teaching the struggles of having all of your friends in your pocket at any one given time.
Wow, yeah, that's a really, really good point. The world has evolved much faster than we have evolved as human beings.
Yes.
I was reading something the other day that was saying that our brains aren't actually equipped to cope with the amount of information we have going into our minds at the moment.
I can definitely back that up.
Well, we're all feeling overwhelmed and exhausted because there's so much information being bombarded at us from our screens and from our technology.
Yeah.
And at the risk of, going back over old ground or drifting into a separate topic, we should be taught this stuff, I got taught about the Saxon invasion of the south of England at one point. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever needed that.
No.
I think I could have benefited more from having those lessons on emotional well-being and mental health.
Yeah. Also, teach me how to do a tax return. I can tell you Henry VIII's wives, but I didn't know how to do a tax return.
Yeah, that's very true. Practical skills. Real life skills.
Street smarts.
Yeah. Well, maybe there are these things in schools now, and we're just so out of touch we don't realise.
Oh, well, yeah, we don't have a clue.
Yeah, it might be. Maybe people can in the comments say, "Yeah, actually, I teach this class."
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so we talked about the role. We're going to talk about the role of mental health first aider, because obviously we talked about what it entails.
Yeah.
But the role of the mental health first aider, as we said, is not to diagnose, not to tell people what's wrong with them, not to cure them like a doctor, but primarily as a first point of contact when somebody's struggling.
Yes, that's exactly it. And it's the way it was described is if you come across someone in crisis. Now, when I first heard that line, I kind of thought about my own personal experience with when I've had what we would call crises.
Yes, multiple,
crises, mental health crises, and it was always okay. Who was the first person that I came across that I interacted with? But this doesn't mean that you're just going to walk down the street and stumble upon someone in a crisis. The way it was describing it to us was to read the warning signs of people that you know, colleagues, people that you interact with, and then kind of prevent anything rather than. Jumping later down the line.
Yeah, this was the thing, wasn't it? The first step they were saying the goal is to preserve life, to put in its simplest terms, and that is kind of to stop people spiralling downwards when they're reaching that point of crisis. You know, I was at Tesco's near the start of the lockdown, and there was a guy in the car park who I'm absolutely certain was a perfectly normal, everyday person, you know, that was just going about his life, who was having what you would swear was a mental breakdown in the car park, simply because he was in a conflict with somebody in that car park and he didn't have the capacity for it right now. You know, as many of us wouldn't in that situation.
Oh, absolutely.
And being able to recognise that, okay, what can I do to diffuse the situation? What can I do to help people recognise that there is, you know, time will continue after this. There is a next chapter, so to speak. You know? And so that was the first thing they said, is that's the first protocol, is to preserve life. And then I think, as you're sort of intimating towards, provide some sort of comfort and support on some level.
Yeah, so you're not going to be going up to them saying, "Hey, tell me everything that's wrong." You know, that's not. So I hear you're depressed, which is genuinely what someone said to me once. As we know.
Well, you know what? Us hypnotherapists have got to get business somehow. You know?
So I hear you're depressed. Want to talk to me about it? Like, that's not how you start a conversation. You know, the easiest one and the one that they said to us was just the whole, "How are you doing? Like, are you okay? Is everything all right?"
And there was that thing recently, wasn't there, on social media and in the press about asking twice.
Yeah, so you ask, literally, don't do it, don't. And that's not by way of saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?"
Yeah. Are you sure? Because you look really bad. You seem to be.
You look tired. That's the one. "Are you all right? You look a bit tired." Like, I'm aware I look like shit. Leave me alone today, thank you. Didn't ask your opinion, Karen. Cheers.
They're saying it because they care. That's what they're saying.
That's it, yeah.
So when I say, "Babe, you look rough this morning," that's because I care.
And then because I punch you in the face, that's because I care as well. Saying things like preserve life sounds really scary. It sounds like you're going to be the one encountering somebody about to do something absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? Maybe one of you will be, you know, but the chances are quite low.
Yeah, it is. We should say this, isn't it? It's like, it's going to be extremely, extremely rare that you are in front of somebody and you're like, "Wow, I'm concerned that they're going to do something drastic now."
I mean, obviously, I can only speak from personal experience. And if you've listened to my TED Talk, this will not come as a surprise to you. If you haven't, I recommend going to watch it. It's called Courage to Continue. It's in my previous name, Britt Wyatt, on YouTube. But I was that person standing on the ledge on top of a car park roof, ready to jump, ready to end my own life. And I'd had enough. I'd really had enough. And what got me down off the ledge wasn't someone with a megaphone saying, you know, "Don't do this." You know, it wasn't like you see in Hollywood. It wasn't as it was. It was literally a security guard had come out onto the roof. I heard him behind me, and I didn't want him going home and telling his family what he'd seen. I didn't want to traumatize anyone with my trauma, you know. Yeah. And that's what he needed to do. I know that sounds really basic, but he was just there. Yeah. You know, and if I'd have actually stuck around long enough for him to have a conversation, maybe he would have asked me if I'm all right. Like, maybe he would have, because he seemed nice, but he was just there. Yeah. And I think that's what I found the course kind of showed. Just be there. Yeah, and also the ability to hear the person and, you know, listen with a mind to hearing what they're saying. When I talk to my guys about building rapport, because obviously whenever you do any sort of kind of coaching or therapy, and you could argue whenever you're interacting in any business or profession with your client base or anything like that, developing some level of rapport with the person is the cornerstone. It's the building blocks of everything we do. But I'm always saying to my lot that the way we build rapport is we have a genuine interest in the person in front of us. Yeah. Because if we have a genuine interest, then what happens is we naturally start to do the things to connect with that person.
person.
Yeah.
And when we're at that point of crisis where we feel like we have very little option, just somebody saying, well, I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And I'm here to hear your story and to hear what you want to tell me right now.
It's that thing, isn't it, that when you're talking to someone, there's a big difference between somebody listening to you and somebody waiting for their opportunity to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the things that I learned. And it's about honestly just shutting up, just being quiet and listening.
It's a message to me now. Is that what I'm doing? Just waiting for my opportunity to speak.
I tell you what, if we're going to go into this box, we'll go into this.
Uh-oh.
But when early on in our relationship,
and
I would come to you with my concerns, my problems, my mental health fears, you very quickly went into therapist mode. You went into the, trying to solve things. And really, over the years that we've been together, you've learned that for me particularly, obviously for other people it would be maybe different strategies, but for me particularly, I just sometimes need to have a moan about the thing, and then I'll be okay.
Well, this is it. There's a very different framework between somebody that comes to someone like me for solutions. Let's work on this. Let's get this changed. And somebody you just end up in a conversation with because they're struggling right now. They're not necessarily there for solutions, for answers. They're first and foremost there to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think, the third thing that is on the kind of the role of the mental health first aid at that list that we were given is preventing from getting worse.
Yes.
So it's almost like being in their space and saying, right, I've got you. So I'm sort of, by the way, I'm gesturing with my hands. But it's like a metaphorical holding of them. It's like, I'm here with you right now. We're in this space. We're not going to let it get any worse right now.
Yeah. And okay, Tim, you won't understand this.
Okay.
But any girls listening will understand this, and I'm not saying this in a sexist way, but you'll see what I mean. But I found the whole thing about being a mental health first aider feels to me like, okay, girls, picture it. You're on a night out. It's been a long time for me, but you're on a night out, and you're in a pub or in a club or you're somewhere, and you go to the toilet. You go to the girls' bathroom, and standing by the sink is a girl, bit drunk. She's crying because her boyfriend has been an arse, right? What do? As a girl, you will always, oh my God, are you all right? Is everything okay? You'll put your arm around it. And I've always maintained that I wish the world was as friendly as drunk girls are to each other in bathrooms. It's a thing. It's a culture.
Yeah.
It's something I'm very proud of. I have gone into club toilets and come out and made lifelong friends that I will never speak to again. But it's that thing of if you saw someone crying, it's that instinct that makes you go, are you all right? Now the problem is that most people, and I'm generalising, I know everyone's different, but most people, when they're struggling mentally, they won't just be standing there crying, obviously there's something wrong.
Yeah.
It's a lot more subtle than that. And like I say, especially when I was struggling and people close to me didn't even know that I was depressed.
Well, let's talk about the signs of when somebody's struggling, because we talked a little bit about that on the course, didn't we? I should say as well, just before we go on, the men's toilets is
a different experience,
a vastly different atmosphere. I feel, if there is any consoling and connecting going on in men's toilets, it's probably not the kind that's going to be.
Honestly, I have spoken to drunk girls' boyfriends on the phone saying, "Listen here, Stephen, she's too good for you, and you need to. No, I'm telling him, you need to step up, Stephen." Like I have done that,
and Stephen's like, "Who is this?"
It's a thing. I have done that.
Brilliant. I bet you have, actually. Yeah.
Also, the next morning when I check my phone and I've got like 6 new Facebook friends, and I'm like, who are these women? And it's all women from bathrooms.
It's all the people whose relationships you counselled in that night.
Yeah, one of my favourite things is what you do is you compliment. You're like, oh my God, I love your dress. I love your dress. And you can barely stand up yourself. You're just like, your dress is really nice. You look so good. You look like a goddess. You look amazing. I've received more compliments in girls' toilets than I think I have anywhere else in my life.
I haven't received many compliments in men's toilets. I'm just scanning the old memory banks.
You're going to the wrong clubs.
Maybe the wrong clubs. Like I go to clubs. Like I've been to a club since the 90s.
Since the 80s.
The 80s, to be fair, yeah. Actually, yeah, probably, to be fair. Anyway, right, so the signs then of when somebody might be struggling, because I think these are important, and it's fair to say, and I think Andy said this at the start of the course as well, it's like all of these things also are signs of
life.
People living life.
So
it's a bit of a difficult one to, categorically say, oh, that's a sign that they're struggling.
Yes.
But you know what? It's a good idea to be mindful of these things.
Yes.
Because even if this isn't a sign of somebody struggling with their mental well-being, it might be a sign that they could do with a conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know what I mean? But anyway, first thing, losing interest in things they would normally have a great deal of interest in.
I mean, that's just me all over, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, I think the list we're about to go through, we all might recognise some of it because of the panini that's going on at the moment. So we might experience, these sorts of feelings and responses because, you know what, we might be struggling at the moment. And I should say as well, before I go through this list, my business organisation that I'm part of, my business networking group, I'll tell you something, it's a little microcosm of the world. Yeah, you see different trades, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different beliefs, and you get this little core sample of the world at the moment. And I tell you something, people are struggling even when they're not realising it at the moment.
Yeah.
And what happens is relationships get fraught and you end up responding in ways that when you look back on it, you think, wow, that seems really out of character for me. That seems almost like what on earth was going on there? And you know what's going on? A global pandemic. Yeah. And the protracted effects of this strange time in our lives. Yeah. But anyway, so losing interest in things. So if you spot people that are kind of just, disengaging from the things they would normally engage with, underperforming at work for no apparent reason.
Yeah, you might just hate your job.
With that, that might be. You might be just done with it. You're like, I was not meant to be here for more than 6 months. And I am 10 years later. We've all been there. You might be feeling exhausted, but at the same time a little bit restless.
I actually know that one. Like that's one that I absolutely feel like, and that's the one of the ones that when I know, okay, I need to check. I need to have a look what's going on because I'll just be tired all the time. Yeah. And when I'm in bed, I'll be right. I need to get up. I need to go do stuff. Yeah. Whereas normally, when you're tired and you get to bed, all you want to do is go to sleep. Whereas I'd be tired and I'd go to bed and I'd start thinking about everything.
But this is the thing. If anyone out there listening to this is currently on a daily basis bouncing with energy, feeling awesome, then you are smashing it, my friend. Because most people on the planet right now are very tired. They're exhausted because there's a lot less stuff that we can just deal with without thinking about it. This is very much, everything is in a transient mode. It keeps changing, it keeps altering, and in no small way either. The decision about whether we can go into a shop or not keeps changing on a regular basis.
Which sounds insane.
And also how we manage the interactions with people and the person that we go into that situation with, how we're meant to behave, what can we have contact, can we not, all that sort of stuff. And also the long-term knock-on implications of all of this stuff. Yeah. So we're having to manage this consciously a lot of the time. We've got a lot more concerns buzzing around in our mind. That leaves us exhausted. Yeah. But at the same time, where it is actually a kind of a place of anxiety that we exist in, when there's lots to manage. Yeah. What it means is that we're kind of adrenalised whilst being exhausted.
Which is then making us more tired.
Exactly. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah. When you're thinking about stuff, people don't realise that thinking about things knackers you out, just like doing physical things.
Oh God, yes.
Just because you haven't gone for a 10k run, but you've sat there contemplating your life decisions. Oh, I'm tired. I wonder why. It's
exactly. It's a lot more exhausting than people realise, and also there's a lot going on that they're not realising in terms of mentally at the moment.
Yeah. So I feel like if you're listening to this and you've been emotionally fraught lately, because who hasn't, and as a result you're tired, and you found yourself at any point over the past few weeks going, why am I so tired lately? Yeah. This is it, and this is your permission to rest.
Exactly. And this is what we're talking about. That's what looking after your mental health is about.
Absolutely.
It's not that, the stress has caused me to become mentally ill. It's like, no, I'm realising that I'm exhausted. I need to grant myself a bit of time, a bit of space, give myself permission to shut down a little bit. I talk to people all the time, wondering why the tasks they used to perform quite easily, they're finding a struggle at the moment.
An uphill push.
Exactly, and that's all. It's all because everything's going on. Another, I was going to say symptom. Is symptom the right word?
Sign,
indicator. Might be isolating from people, not wanting to socialise.
There are those of us that
I know you don't really like people anyway, do you?
I don't. I know that makes me sound really miserable, but I'm not a people person.
I remember when I met you, and I was like, wow, you have so many friends that you talk to every day online, you message them, you've got a great social life. And you said, yeah, I'm really good at socialising on the internet. It's the outer net that I struggle with.
And I maintain that. Yeah. I don't like the outer net.
Yeah,
you know, my friend told me I should get a life. I asked him to send me a link.
Amazing. Okay, another couple of things. You might find yourself with a decreased or increased appetite, a shift in your normal appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for several reasons. We can do comfort eating, can't we?
Yeah.
Or we can find ourselves not hungry because we are in a stress state.
Yeah.
You know? And then that obviously and just to explain that, when we go into a stress state, we lose our appetite because our body's focusing on, survival and taking action rather than sustaining itself with food.
Yeah.
And the last one, a reduced or increased sex drive.
Hello. At some point on this grown-up podcast, we'll mention something to do with sex, and I won't put on a silly voice.
And I won't giggle.
That day is not today.
But it was really interesting to me. I thought I've heard about a reduced sex drive.
The increased one I thought was odd, because I'll be honest, as my husband, you'll know this, but when I'm not in a great way, you can stay away from me.
Well, this is it. I mean, if I'd have experienced, like, any time you felt in a depressive mood, you turned into a sex beast, then I think that would be a different framework for our relationship, I feel.
No, meanwhile, I'm like, I'll go sleep in the spare room.
But I thought it was interesting. I haven't always associated mental struggles with increased sex drive.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Unless you're talking like people like Ted Bundy or something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
But having said that, I should stress, disclaimer, I'm not saying that if you do have an increased sex drive when you're feeling low.
You're Ted Bundy.
You're Ted Bundy, yeah. But also, I was going to say, pop it in the comments. Do you have an increased sex drive when you're feeling? But I've not even noticed that one, so I've not been aware of that. So I thought it was a very interesting thing to highlight.
I agree.
But I think basically what it's saying there is when there's a shift in your normal patterns of response and behaviour, it could be an indicator that there's some different processing going on in your mind at the moment, and you're responding to that in some way.
Absolutely.
The thing I found interesting, and I know we've spoken about this many times over the years. Andy was very keen to distinguish between things like anxiety and clinical anxiety. And
I feel like one of them wears a white coat.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, hello. Anxiety. It's serious now. But and this was an interesting one for me because, anyone that's seen my TED Talk will know that I really...
Oh, we've all done a TED Talk.
I'm just so pleased I could say it. Do you know what I mean? It's like I went 45 years unable to say the phrase, as I said in my TED Talk. And now
there are certain things we're allowed to say, as I said in my TED Talk, as I said in my Amazon #1 best-selling book. There are certain things we're allowed to say. We worked hard.
It never gets old, does it?
Never.
It never gets tired. But the point being that I'm like, well, anxiety is anxiety. It's an emotion. Sometimes it gets higher, sometimes it gets lower.
Yes.
But when I know that one of my practitioners questioned Andy on it, she was like, what do you mean by clinical anxiety? How are you defining between that? And Andy was like, well, if it's been diagnosed. Now, I thought that was... I think Andy was ready to accept that was an arbitrary distinction because it's like, okay, who's given you that diagnosis?
No, exactly.
How much did they find out about you before they decided this was your diagnosis? I think any mental health diagnosis is inevitably has the potential of creating a negative emotional response for you.
Yeah, and I do understand. Andy made the distinction as well that I can understand from a different point of view, which I'll explain. But I can understand how diagnoses?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Diagnosis.
We'll go with that.
I'm not sure if it's a word. I understand how they can help people with the process.
Yeah.
Completely get that.
Yes.
Completely get that. But I also know how they can hinder people with the process as well. So myself, for example, I have hypermobility syndrome. And whilst I'm maybe not, I don't class myself as having a disability. I don't class myself, even though I think it is technically, I have a key for the public toilets, if that helps. But and it's technically classed that, but I don't think of myself in that way particularly.
Yeah.
But I know I have hypermobility syndrome, and when I looked into it, I read a lot of scary things that maybe I didn't want to read, particularly about degenerative joints and stuff like that. But I read a lot of stuff that will actually be really, really good for me on a preventative measure.
Yeah, I get it.
So I did the research and I found out, okay, these things help, these things don't. I'll do more of the things that help.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that's worth saying as well, that Andy made the point that his diagnoses, when he was diagnosed with depression and anxiety at a later stage, I think, clinical anxiety, it helped him, because it helped him. He could then say, right, okay, that's why I feel this way.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a different discussion, the origins of a high anxiety response or a depressive outlook. That's a different discussion. But I think for him, it helped him to say, right, now I can do the things to manage this particular issue that I have, or something like that. Now, my argument is always, don't manage your condition, manage you.
Yeah,
manage
absolutely.
your mental health, because you're going to get a lot more benefit from just working with what you know makes you struggle, and what you know provides you with support and help and makes you feel better. Because if you just operate on your diagnosis, then you're going to be reading a lot about how you should be feeling, how you should be behaving. And
you can talk yourself into all of that.
This is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if we ask our mind to operate within the confines of a certain condition or a certain diagnosis, then it doesn't necessarily try and operate outside of those confines.
Yeah, it accepts it.
It creates boundaries that then, it's like the glass ceiling thing. It's there because it's there in our mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I know it's not the same thing, but to relate it to my hypermobility, for example, where I am in my 30s, I know my hypermobility. I know it gets worse as you get older. I'm aware of that, but I'm not talking myself into it. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I'm nearly 33. That means I'm at this stage of it. And also I've read things like yoga, which I love. It's like, oh, you got to be careful doing that. And things like, the circus training that I do, oh, we got to be careful. But I do it and it makes me stronger and it makes me better. So it's not, I don't want to live within the confines of it. I just use it as an informational basis. And I think that's kind of what people who are diagnosed with, depression like I was, anxiety like I was, should look at it as, okay, what can I learn from this, rather than, okay, what are my limitations? That's
exactly the point. And it's worth saying as well that any of us who end up in a conversation with somebody, supporting them with their current crisis, if you like, it doesn't matter whether they've been diagnosed as depressed or anxious. It doesn't mean, oh, I can't talk to you, I'm afraid.
Absolutely.
Because you're always going to benefit from having a conversation with somebody who cares enough to listen.
Yeah, even people who wouldn't self-confess that they are struggling mentally. Do you know what I mean? Even people that you're like, oh no, they're fine.
Yeah.
Just having a conversation with them can do wonders, even if they're not, we're not here to gatekeep people's mental health. And I really despise the, oh, well, you're not depressed enough, you're not anxious enough. If you're fine now, you were never depressed. I despise all of that gatekeeping. If someone says to you they're struggling, guess what, hun? They're struggling.
And this is the thing, the number of times that I've spoken to people in the last 18 months who didn't need a diagnosis, they didn't need a session with me, they just needed to tell me what's going on with them right now, and me be able to say, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I can understand why you're feeling that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once we know that there's nothing, I don't know, in inverted commas, wrong with us, then we can start, okay, let me start to manage this mental health thing then.
Yes.
Let me start to manage what's going on in my mind, in my life.
Absolutely.
And then it empowers us, I think, to do a little bit more and be a little bit better to ourselves,
And I know obviously some people will not want to talk because, we learned about stigma, didn't we?
Yeah.
We learned about the two different types of stigma, one that we knew about and one that we maybe didn't necessarily think about.
Well, that's right, because it was interesting. There was distinction on the course between those two types. One we were referring to as social stigma, which I think is the stigma we talk about, isn't it?
Yes.
People afraid to come forward because they will be judged.
Yeah, because of what other people may think.
And there was a very convenient photo, an appropriate photo in the manual that showed one girl looking sad and depressed.
Yes.
And then on the other table were all her workmates side-eyeing her judgmentally.
Yeah.
To illustrate the point that we don't come forward because we fear this is the way we'll be treated.
I'd love to have been there on that photo shoot. Yeah. Right, if you could all just look at her like she's stolen the last Twix out of the company box. Thank you.
I'd have been like, well, what's my motivation? What has she wrong to me?
She stole your Twix.
That's it. Well, no, I feel like I probably come from a privileged family. I feel like I'm... I can't
you need a whole backstory.
That's it. I've never really struggled mentally. I don't understand what's going on with them. But this is the thing. So the social stigma. But then the more impactful thing, I think, is the self-stigma.
Yes.
And that's the stigma we impose upon ourselves.
Yeah.
Which stops us reaching out.
And the difference with self-stigma, I find, is that it can go many ways. It can go the way of, I'm so broken that nobody can help me. Yeah. And oh, I'm not ill enough for anyone to help me. You know, there's
that side of it.
And then there's like a reluctance to get help because, well, what does that mean? If I've got help, then that means that I'm down a path I can't come back from. You know, it's just the self-stigma really is just giving yourself shit when you don't need to.
Exactly, when those thoughts about not being good enough or not being worth caring for, stuff like that. And you know, I think you get this a lot from guys. One of the stats that they brought forward on the course there was that it was something like it's mostly women that experience depression, but it's mostly men that kill themselves. Yeah, and I think that's telling because women hopefully feel more able to reach out and but I think women are more comfortable being vulnerable in that way, or feeling like I need help with something. Yeah. And guys, we're just like, we're like these toxic monsters that feel like we have to be constantly powerful and and be the stiff upper lip sort of thing.
And winning bread.
Yeah, exactly. Winning bread. And then it stops us reaching out, and that's the self-stigma. That's the idea that if I declare this, then there's something wrong with me. Yeah.
I mean, talking about stigma, when I was suffering with depression and I was working in an office job, the only person I could talk to really was my line manager. He was brilliant. I just want to point that out. He was fantastic. He was really, really nice. But he kind of said to me, if we just keep this between us, it was very much, it was a secret. It had to be a secret. And I didn't like that. And then I was going home early because I had, I think I had a counsellor appointment at that point. I think I was actually seeing somebody. And one of the CEO managing director guys who was just around said to stop me at the top of the stairs. And he was like, where are you going? And then my line manager was also around, and he was like, oh, Britt's just taking a half personal day. She's got some things that she needs to sort out. I don't know, he stumbled over his words a bit. And this managing director went, not mental, are you, Britt? Like that. And I didn't know how to answer it. I was like, yes.
He sounds like Chris Morris's character from the IT Crowd.
Yes, that's exactly who it was. Very much like that. And I just sort of was like, and I left to go to my counselling appointment.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It is one of those things. I mean, we talked about mental health in the workplace as well, didn't we?
Yes.
And how we can do things to encourage a positive dialogue regarding our mental health.
I feel we have a positive dialogue in our workplace for mental health.
What workplace?
Well, the kitchen.
The kitchen, yeah, okay, yeah, that's not. Well, I suppose hence the podcast. I mean, you don't have to start a podcast on it. Obviously, that's not That's not a prerequisite of talking about mental health. But I do. So I do a lot of presentations to companies at the moment because it's starting to be one of those things that companies are recognising. More than 50% of long-term absences are stress-related. And that's your mental health we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's like I did a talk recently with the Department for Education. Because they're making a real big push about mental health in the workplace. And what I think it's great because, we've gone from let's just keep this between you and me to now company-wide sitting down, talking about it. And I think, we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go, but we're getting there, and we're getting there closer and closer every day. And I think things like mental health first aid courses and having maybe a designated mental health first aider in your workplace could really help. I do think it's one of those things that if what we've said, and what we're saying now is something that you think, actually, I think my work could benefit from that, speak to your manager, speak to someone at work and say, I'd like to do this course, because Andy was saying, wasn't he, that you can do the course and become sort of, in the same way that a company will have a registered physical health first aider, you could become the company registered mental health first aider.
Absolutely.
And I think, I think that's a really, really good thing to do.
Well, see, the role that I'm playing in companies is they've got their mental health first aider, but they want to encourage positive dialogue.
Yes.
So that people will feel like when I need to go to my mental health first aider, it will be okay to do so. So we run sessions and we talk about this stuff and we cover a little bit of education about it all. And as a result, hopefully, it creates a little bit more of a positive workplace environment when it comes to talking about stress and anxiety and low feelings and negative thoughts and things like that.
Yeah.
If we set up a nice environment, then we don't need that mental health first aider so often because we can manage our mental health.
Absolutely.
Because after all, when you're in a workplace, it should be a team environment, shouldn't it? You should be there for each other. I think all too often, the people around us end up being antagonists rather than protagonists in our story. Do you know what I mean? They end up being the thing that causes us stress rather than the thing that supports us through it.
Absolutely. So when I did a little Q&A on my Instagram a little while back, and it was just a thing of tell me something you want my advice on. It was something like that. And someone had written in and said, I'm being bullied at work and I don't know what to do about it. Wow. Now, first of all, I'm like, give me their name. I just want to talk, but I despise, I hate bullies, There we go.
Like Captain America.
Captain America reference.
Excellent. Get in. It's been a while. We haven't had a Captain America reference for a while.
Which is funny because the way you're sitting, you're currently below a replica of the Captain America shield.
I do like to imagine myself always having the shield just behind me.
But anyway, and I was very much like, that's not acceptable, speak to your manager. And I know some people are scared to speak out, but, a lot of us were bullied at school. Yeah. And as awful as it is, it's a thing that happens because kids are horrible. Yeah. But that shit should stay at school. Yeah. It should not be following you into the work.
No, it doesn't. You don't have to put up with that anymore. No. The other thing to remember is when we're at school, we don't get the option to just not go to school because we haven't got that sort of autonomy or that sort of agency in our life. When we're an adult, if our work environment is rubbish, if we can't change the environment, if the people that we're talking to about the environment aren't listening, right, we can go somewhere else. Yeah. We have that autonomy.
I leave.
Yeah, we can decide to do that. So, and again, it's about valuing ourselves enough to take those steps and say, no, I'm worth more than this. I'll go somewhere where I'm valued.
Yeah. And one of the things as well that we learned on the course, as we said earlier, if you're scared to say the wrong thing and just saying anything, it sounds silly and it sounds reductive to say it's common sense. But if you think about it, if you wanted to start a conversation with someone, you would do it gently. You wouldn't say, are you mental?
Hopefully you wouldn't.
Yeah. Hopefully you wouldn't. Yeah. Not like that guy.
Not like that.
No, I won't.
What have we learned from that? Well, okay, look, we're coming near the end of this. Obviously, it's a skimming stone over the stuff that we learned on the day. And if you feel like it's something you'd like to do, then we'll put the link to Andy's course in the description or something, so that people can get in touch with him. Because I strongly recommend it. I highly, because it's a great experience, and you feel like you've really learned something of value when you come away from it.
And you get a nice certificate.
You do.
Not actually, you don't get a certificate just for attending. You have to have an assessment, which we had, and we both passed.
It's not a difficult assessment. Let's be. If you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to do a test, trust me, it's not tricky. Yeah. I think everyone.
But valuable. But we earned it.
Well, exactly. It just checks you've been listening and that you've learned what you need to learn.
Exactly.
And here's the main point of what you need to learn is the action plan.
Nice.
Which I'd like us to finish off with now.
The care action plan.
The care action plan. It's an acronym, CARE.
Tim loves an acronym.
I do. I'm fond of them. I don't know what you're referring to. But yeah, again, massively shoehorned into an acronym, as all the best acronyms are, I feel.
Like the control system, really.
Well, that was that organic. They just developed into those 7 letters that spell out control. Anyway, don't get me on the soapbox about that one. Right. So the first thing, C, stands for check for risk.
Yeah. So you would check for risk of. I was listening on the course. I did not. But you would. You know what? It's throwing me off because you looked at me like you were handing over to me, and I was ready to just listen to you for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then suddenly you're in that exam room again doing the test. No, yeah, check. You've got to check for imminent danger of self-harm or suicide or stuff like that.
To yourself and to others as well.
Oh yeah, making sure you're not at risk. That's the other thing.
That's exactly the same thing with physical first aid as well. It's one thing giving someone first aid who's fallen over in the street. Yeah. It's another thing trying to help someone who's maybe laying on railroad tracks unconscious.
Precisely. Yeah. We talk about if we genuinely feel someone is at risk, what might we do in terms of calling emergency services or reaching out to what is it, 111?
111. Yeah.
Things like that. But as we said before, it will be quite rare that we'll feel that it's that state of emergency where we have to now call an ambulance.
If in doubt, always call 999.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just if in doubt.
Yeah, I think. Who is it? Again, another friend of ours whose partner is a paramedic.
Claire, yeah.
She was making the point to us that he always says that we're never going to be upset if you called emergency services, but then it turned out it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, if you felt it was necessary, you'd make the call.
It's much better to get it wrong that way round than the other way round.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the A stands for apply non-judgmental communication skills.
Have a conversation. Ask if they're all right. Are you okay? Yeah. Are you sure you're okay?
Open questions.
Yes.
Yeah, open questions. You want to say how you're feeling rather than anxious, nervous, worried, that sort of thing.
Do not say anxious, nervous, worried.
No, exactly. But again, and the whole non-judgmental communication skills, that's covered on the training, but it is very much about being there present with somebody, being in their space, allowing them the space to talk and hearing what they're saying. And, you know, expressing some degree of empathy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things we won't be able to empathise with because we're all unique human beings with our own unique experiences.
Yeah. Granny or Goldfish, wasn't it?
Granny or Goldfish. What was that referring?
It was...
Oh, no, that was it. So he said, you might have somebody who's dealt with the death of a relative, and it's not a great idea to say, well, you know, I lost my hamster last year, so that, I know what you're
Granny
going
or
through.
Hamster,
that doesn't mean you know what they're going through if your hamster died.
Yes. As much as Sir Bartholomew Chungus Ginger Snap III is probably a wonderful hamster, maybe don't compare the hamster to the grandmother who's just died.
Exactly. So showing empathy is more about the ability to comprehend and be and validate the way they're feeling. Yeah. The R stands for reassure.
Yes.
And you can reassure them in many, many ways.
Yeah.
So Andy said the thing he likes to remind people is that 1 in 4 people every year will experience some form of mental health struggle.
Which is an insane number, really, isn't it? 1 in 4.
No pun intended.
Oh, God, yeah, no, sorry, that's not what I meant. Just to reassure them that things will be okay.
Yeah, this is the thing.
The world will keep turning and things will be okay.
Exactly, there are better times ahead, things like that. You know? Or simply reassure them that I'm here now and there's help coming as well.
Yes.
You know, that sort of thing. So we've got you now.
Yeah.
The last one, E, encourage them to seek out professional support and even signpost them towards that professional support.
Yes.
Where they should be.
So offering suggestions of things like maybe seeing people like yourself or people like, you know, your practitioners, or call, you know, if in doubt, calling the Samaritans or getting them to speak out to someone maybe close to them. If this is a colleague, you know, maybe encourage them to speak to a family member or a relative or you know, something like that.
There's so much out there available, and I absolutely guarantee there'll be people listening to this and said, oh, it was rubbish for me when I rang this number or got in touch with this organisation.
Oh, yeah.
But you've got to remember that it isn't so much about what the plan is, it's more about there is a plan.
Yes.
There is something to do. I remember a lady contacted me I think it was Friday afternoon, saying she was having a mental health crisis, she was desperate to see somebody. I happened to have had a cancellation for Monday morning, so I booked her in, and she said, well, what am I going to do over the weekend? Yeah. And I said to her, well, we've got a plan in place now. Yeah. You're coming to see me Monday morning, so chill out for the weekend. You've taken the action you needed to take to kind of move towards the light, as it were. Exactly. When she got there Monday morning, she said, I'm already feeling so much better.
It's sometimes just knowing where you're going. Yeah. I think it's having that plan that sometimes just can settle you down a little bit.
And also, I think the thing that I very nearly missed when I was doing this, when I was learning it, encouraging self-help as well, and looking after your own mental health. And, you know, all of the common tropes there in terms of nutrition and sleep and rest and downtime.
Fresh air.
Yeah, exactly. You know, get yourself outside, as we always say. You know, that sort of thing. Encouraging them to do that and managing what's going on with them a little bit better.
Yeah, because you'll be surprised how much you can help yourself as well as seeking help professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it begins, isn't it? You ultimately, it's you that looks after you.
Yes.
And we have to bear that responsibility. Yeah, because sometimes I see a lot of people who have maybe got into the habit of neglecting themselves.
Because they're looking after other people.
Exactly, as if they're not as worthy of their own attention and their own care as other people are. Yeah. And you know, that can lead us down a dark road. Yeah. Inevitably, if we do reach a point of crisis, it's normally incorporating somewhere a lack of self-care.
Absolutely. So just remember that you are worthy. You know, you are worth it. You are worth love. You are worth time. You are worth care. You are worth attention. And just to not neglect yourself. You know, I will say be kind to yourself every day for the rest of my life, because it's something I really truly believe, because I've been kind to myself and I've been unkind to myself, and I know which one feels better.
Yeah, and you know how you feel better about you afterwards as well. If you display the attitude that you're worth caring for, you know what, you might just start to care about yourself.
That's nice.
Have I given a little soundbite there?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, as we said, basically, we did really enjoy the mental health first aid course. And, you know, it might be something that you'd like to look into doing. And if not, it's just one of those things just to remember that if someone is struggling and you don't know what to say, anything is better than nothing.
Absolutely, just being there.
Just being there. And we are here for you guys. So thank you very much.
And talking of being here, where can people find us?
I was about to do that.
Oh, you were going. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you about to do that.
You stopped my flow.
Suggest you did it.
Stop my flow.
You don't want to do it now, do you?
I hate that. I hate. You know when you're just about to do something and someone goes, "Why don't you do this?" Like, no, I don't want it now. Anyway. Thank you very much for listening, guys. You can come find us on Instagram. You can find me at Britt Marie Box and Tim at Tim Box Mind Coach. Make sure to tag us when you're listening to the podcast. We love knowing where you guys are when you're listening. Please do send us any of your comments, questions by DM. And if you've got any suggestions for upcoming topics, just let us know that as well. As always, thank you very, very much for listening. We really, really hope you've enjoyed it.
And keep thinking outside the box.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.